There's an old joke, or at least what some people have the nerve to call a joke, that goes a little bit like this. Why is the bottom of the ocean so dark? Because black people can't swim. Now, this joke is of course dark, offensive, and stereotypical, but hear me out, there is a little bit of truth to it. A study done by USA Swimming found that 58% of all African Americans cannot swim. This same study found that African American children drown at nearly 3 times the overall national rate. This begs the question, why is it that so many people of color cannot swim? Well, what if I told you it was because of something called intergenerational trauma? Intergenerational trauma is defined as trauma that is passed from a trauma survivor to their descendants. A good example of this would be having a grandfather who fought in World War II and came back with PTSD. Because of their trauma, their children are now several times more likely to end up developing things ranging from anxiety and depression to alcoholism and drug dependency, with them being more likely to pass it on to their children and so on and so forth. But now I hear you asking, how does this connect to the stereotype that African Americans cannot swim? Well, I'm getting there. But first, let's go back to the year 1920. Pools are popping up everywhere in suburbs across America, but just as everything in America at that time, they were deeply segregated. Some by laws, but many through violence, with community leaders encouraging pool swimmers and pool owners to quite literally beat black swimmers out of the water, with some going as far as pouring bleach and acid into the water so as to blind African American swimmers. What this led to was a generation of parents unwilling to take their children and teach them how to swim, stemming from the trauma that they faced when they were trying to do just that. This created what we see today, with so many people of color not being able to swim, and in some cases, quite literally being afraid of the water. Now, swimming is only one example of intergenerational trauma, and a pretty large one at that. But intergenerational trauma also shows up in a lot more smaller facets of life, with it being different for everyone. I am a living example of this. My grandfather was born in 1946 in the middle of nowhere, Georgia. At that time, dealing with Ku Klux Klansmen was a normal occurrence. And I have family members who tell me stories that he has told them about how growing up at around the young age of 12, he along with his brothers were tasked with protecting his home from people who wished to lynch him because of his race. Can you imagine that? Being 12 years old and being handed a gun and being told that you are what separates your family from life and death? This made him very paranoid and a no-nonsense kind of person from a very young age, making it so he never really had a chance at childhood. This is what is referred to as childhood emotional neglect. And because of this trauma sustained as a child, he had very little patience, found it difficult to express his emotions, was quick to outburst, and showed signs of hyperactivity. Though my mom is several times better than my grandfather was, and I am too, I still see these traits in both her and myself, with me often losing patience very quickly for those who I care about most, and me often being unable to concentrate on certain tasks, which is a sign of hyperactivity. Now, what are some solutions to this cycle of trauma that I've been talking about? Well, one is going through your own family tree and seeing if you have any history of intergenerational trauma, so as though you can be on top of it, find a therapist, and listen to them on what you should do to create change in your family. Another solution is simply going on the internet and educating yourself more so you can bring it up to others, so as though they can pursue this and find out what intergenerational trauma is in their family so they can break the cycle. Now, these two solutions sound a little bit basic, but they can make the world of difference in a subject that we as a nation should be talking more about. To finish, I'm going to end it the same way I started it, with a joke, though I promise it won't be anywhere as messed up. A man goes to a surgeon before his surgery and asks him, "Hey, do I still have to pay if something goes wrong?" The doctor then turns to him and says, "I demand my fees whether I have killed you or the illness." Now, this is funny, but it is a great allegory for intergenerational trauma. Because just as with trauma, you're going to pay regardless, whether that be with your life or with your mental health getting worse. But it's up to you if you want to make that change or not. Thank you.